Welcome everyone. Thanks very much for having me to the Syncron team. I'm Andrew Hill. I am the new, and I'll emphasise the word new, head of pricing for Al-Futtaim. New being, I've been in the role for 2 weeks now. I'm sure you will have lots of questions. I can give you a good overview, and I will give you an overview of some of the benefits that we have found from using Syncron pricing for the past 3.5 years. For any questions, I would direct you to my colleagues Suleiman and Arti for later on to show exactly how we use the system. But just to pick up on some of the highlights. So this was the pricing landscape before. Some of the buzzwords that I would talk about in terms of the pricing system is managing complexity, control, and consistency. So if you look back at how we used to use our pricing methodology, everything was based on cost plus. I say everything, but in general, everything was a cost plus. The business had a particular margin that they wanted to achieve. We knew the price, and we would set the price accordingly. Obviously, that doesn't give us any responsiveness to market dynamics. It made us a market follower, not a market leader. I'm sure you all know Al-Futtaim. We like to think of ourselves as the market leader, but this is where our actions didn't necessarily follow our words. Stock challenges. If you're not competitive, you're not dynamic with your prices, you're going to get some severe winners, and of course you're going to get some severe losers, and you're unable, or you're less reactive to stock as it's building up. And then the problem gets bigger and it becomes more expensive. Most importantly, you lose control of then clearing out of that stock. Market disconnect, this is an obvious one. So if you're just doing on cost plus, you're not really related to what the other parts are in the market. We all know this region. I would always describe it as very, very leaky, but we all face the same challenges in terms of grey imports, aftermarket, stock offloaders, and even people who might be buying a large amount of stock and selling it overseas, but because they have an opportunity to sell it here, they can ruin your price level within the market. Again, a control point. Cost uncertainty. This isn't necessarily a benefit from using APP, but this is very much looking at the approach that we used to have as a business. When you're spending all of your time managing lots and lots of Excel spreadsheets, you spend less time thinking about what's coming next. So you're always reacting to everything as opposed to trying to get ahead of the game. Do you look at managing a price increase before you've got your annual cost increase coming through and trying to realise a benefit before you've actually increased your inventory costs, for example? Margin oversight. If everything's cost plus, you don't know where your winners or your losers are. Quite often what we would have found in the past, we would be Al-Futtaim, we were growing, thankfully, year on year, a very successful business, but that can sometimes mask some of your additional opportunities that lie where you've got some of your margin leakers, some of your slow decliners, etc. And then obviously your operational efficiency. When you've got a team who are just loading price lists directly into your ERP system, in our case we use SAP, they're not spending that time looking at what they could be doing next, what they could be doing more intelligently. And also mass uploads take a lot of time. One of the key benefits, and I'll jump on to the next slide, we have something like 7 different sales channels. We have over 10 brands that Al-Futtaim manage. We used to have 100 price lists. Moving to APP, connecting all of the price lists, we've now moved to around 30 price lists. So even immediately you can see the operational efficiency that would give us as an organisation. So the pain points. Obviously, you can imagine 600,000 part numbers is roughly what we manage in terms of pricing within the system. It's a lot of manual processes. We've all been there when your Excel spreadsheet is crashing, you have to rebuild the logic, and that's a very important thing. You're not telling the system what the logic is, you're having to do it manually every single time. You're not using something that can learn for you, not repeat the mistakes, but learn from the mistakes that you've made in the past. Limited scalability. Hopefully we're all growing as businesses. If you think of multiplying up that complexity, the problem is only getting worse. It's compounding. You're not getting better, you're only ever adding on to your administrative burden. Fragmented structures. Now this is a really interesting one because I think it speaks to some of the bits that James was talking about, particularly in terms of control. If you're managing multiple price lists across multiple channels, how do you know that you've got a really loyal customer who might be doing a lot of volume with you, isn't ending up in a situation where he goes into a different dealer, for example, where they're running away with their discounting, for example, and the customer walking off the street can pay more than a loyal customer who's been coming to you for the past 5 years. It sounds obvious, but when you're dealing with so many part numbers and so much complexity, having a system that can be fed that information to alert you and flag it is a real win for a business. And then lack of strategic insights. I've touched on this a couple of times already, but when you're spending your time doing lots of admin, you're not spending your time looking at where are the next opportunities, what are the initiatives that I can do. To give you an example, menu pricing is something that we've used in the APP system that's been of a massive benefit to what we call our tier one, our service business. So looking at how we're intelligently pricing things as opposed to just how do we react to the market to try and sell more. So, talking about the problems, obviously the solutions speak to all of these. So what have we been able to do? Controlled margins, better margin visibility across the business, across all the channels, being able to put in ceilings by product group, by different channel, ensures that we're maximising, we hope, as best we can, our opportunity across all of the business, not just in our fast movers, for example, where we know we have economies of scale on purchasing. Aligned structures I've already talked about, so being able to make sure that our dealer prices, whilst not necessarily directly correlate to our service prices, but at least they're related to each other. There's a logic behind them that flows all the way through, and that comes back to the automation that can flow through. Market-based logic. This is a really interesting one, because if you move away from cost plus and just being reactive to what's in your warehouse, and then start the system speaking to the market prices, you can start looking at where do I want to be against competitor A? Where do I want to be against an importer who might have a really good price, but they don't necessarily have the availability? What value do we want to put on as a business, being able to provide that service on time to the customer, but with the right part at a price that optimizes our profit level? Automated policies. Now, this is an interesting one, and this is something where I'll talk about the actual benefit that we've gained from this, but automated policies in terms of aged stock. Tony talked about the fact that the pricing system speaks to the inventory system. This is something where we can get ahead of aged stock. So rather than waiting for it to come out on a report, then we have to go and manually look at the pricing. The system will automatically flag for us, this part is in decline, this part is going to be in aged stock in the future. It's going to be a problem in the future, but we're able to react to it now, deal with it now, and make sure that it doesn't become a problem further on down the line. Then segment specific. James talked about tyres. It's always a good example, particularly in any automotive business who focuses on parts, but they also do tyres like we do. It's a completely different model. It's a completely different dynamic. It requires completely different logic. You can have a totally separate team, a totally separate person just looking after tyres, or you can teach the system the logic required for tyres and reduce your administrative burden, improve your efficiency, improve your margin. And then, as I say, improved efficiency. So this is a best guess, but around over 50% reduction in price revision time alone just from implementing this system. Again, that's scalable, depends how many price lists, how many SKUs, but it's something that we have seen a real benefit from implementing this system. So then what next can we do? What are the capabilities that we believe we can utilise and in some cases are utilising from the system? So I've talked a bit about proactive insights, but this is very much speaking again to teach the system. Don't just get data from your ERP or your inventory system, analyse it and then have an action. Get the system speaking to each other. I'm sure Suleiman can speak in a bit more detail on this if you're interested, in terms of how we build that logic in. Do you have margin ceilings on different products? Do you have a different policy as soon as something comes into aged stock, so on and so forth? Advanced segmentation. This is quite an interesting one if you're dealing with a customer who's doing a lot of volume or not doing, or doing less volume. How do you build your policy around incentivizing growth? Do you have that structure in place that's linked to, rather than having two separate price lists, do you have it all feeding off one system that automatically generates it for you? Strategic growth opportunities. Lost sales is something that we've started to use as a business. I don't know how recently, so apologies, but lost sales analysis in terms of we link into our APP a hit on our ERP system. If the customer's got the price and then declined the order, that tells us that the reason they've declined it is because of price. If the customer's inquired about a part number and we don't have it on the shelf, that means we've lost the sale because of availability. Using Syncron, again, rather than having to download lots of data, analyse it, what are the part numbers, we're able to flag that immediately to us, and that's straight away a strategic target for your campaign. Lost sales is something that we've been able to measure an incremental 5.4% gross margin benefit year on year since we introduced this system. Competitive strategy. Now, this is an obvious one, and I've already talked about it, but you can put in where do you want to be within the market. You can spend more time looking at where do you want to be on a service package compared to an oil filter. Where do you want to be on a sensor that is far less price elastic in the market? You can build in those ceilings. Operational excellence, again on the same theme. Less time spent on analysing data is more time spent looking at insights, looking at what you can do next. What is the next value that you can deliver to your business? And then finally, speaking again to the link with pricing, but also with the inventory system, age stock, health improvement, we reckon around 4% incremental revenue just from excess stock alone. So this is back to selling the stock before it becomes a problem. Sell it while it is still value to your business, rather than selling it when you've been sat on it for so long and you have to dump it within the market. I think that's the last one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.